everybody. We are back for channeling part 2 with my beautiful friend Kimberly, my fairy friends. And so we have some more really fun topics to discuss today. So we'll go ahead and hop on into it. If y'all have questions about the things that we are discussing, or you want us to expand on anything, feel free to look at the text box below this video and you can submit them there. And we can always make future videos, or I can make some to answer y'all's questions. Okay, so the first question that we have that someone submitted was, how do you tell the difference between when your higher self is talking to you, or your inner children, or spirit guides, or just really any type of ethereal being? Because it can be really confusing when you have all of these different facets of self or outside of self, and they're coming through in your own voice. How do you differentiate between who is who? So, Kimberly, what about you?
Uh, I'm prepared for this question. Um, I think that I have to trust when, well, okay, let me go about it like this. In the way that when you start channeling or you start seeing or you tap, let's say when you tap in, okay, when you're in the flow state and you tap in, if you can understand the difference between watching something being shown to you or actually participating where it's more like you're in the scene, right? Does that okay, so like you're either watching it or you're participating in it. When you channel or when you receive messages, I think that when you truly comprehend what's happening, you're in the scene. So if your inner child is talking to you, you're going to actually feel the way that you did when you were little, when that thing was happening, or the way you used to feel as a kid when something like that happened, and why they're afraid or why they're happy. When one of your guides come in, if you have the ability to perceive them and see them, it's going to be really obvious. If you don't and you just hear a voice, that's typically your higher. For me, that's my higher self. When I see guides, I typically see them as deities. When I see guides for other people, it's just made very clear to me that it's one of their guides. And often it's not even a guide that's always with them. Often it's a guide that'll step in to help them with the current situation that they're working through. So it kind of it you have to trust yourself. And so and
That's
you all
the answer. That's
right.
the answer that nobody wants to hear.
I know.
But
Well,
that's the answer that it always is.
here's the other thing. Are we talking about what we when we're tapping in for ourselves, or are we talking about when we're working with a client?
Oh,
I
wait,
think
I think for the context for this question, which we can get into that in a little bit, but more so like if you're tapping with yourself, like how do you tell the
okay.
difference
Yeah.
about who is speaking with you?
If I hear a quick answer, a quick voice, like you should be doing this, and for your whole life up until this point, you've always assumed that was your intuition, that was your higher self.
Yeah, your intuition is your higher self.
Yeah. If
Like that voice is
I,
like, oh, you should go do this, or you should go do that, or not do this, not to do that. This is your higher self
yeah,
that can see more of the roadmap than you can see right now.
if something grabs your attention and you see you experience a synchronicity, that was one of your guides, one of your angels, one of your guides. If you are in meditation and something walks in and introduces itself to you, that is most likely a deity.
Mhm.
And it's pretty amazing. Yeah. Did
That's
that?
beautiful. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I like that you brought up, if it is one of your inner children that is trying to connect with you or speak with you, you're going to feel like you did as a
Yeah.
child, and that can go positive and negative.
Yeah.
So if you have a lot of fear and anxiety or catastrophizing, you're going to start to feel very small, like a child would, and kind of like retract back into yourself and feel like you're not powerful. Um, a lot of different ways, just more in that
If you can,
survival state of being.
emotionally affected, most likely it's an inner child.
Yeah,
Yeah.
emotions that have not been cleared out. Yeah, yeah, emotions can really suck you in because most children, especially empaths and light workers, did not know how to self-regulate. They didn't have the tools and resources because nobody was like teaching them. And so if you have a good handle on your emotions currently, right, then you are able to look at your situation objectively. We still need to process our emotions and feel them, but you don't get attached to them as easily. But if you are getting attached to them very easily, most likely that is an inner child that's trying to take over and zap you back into those survival states of being.
Yeah.
But then the
Yeah.
positive is true as well. Like if you are with your friends and you're just very giddy and
Hmm.
laughter and fun and happiness and joy, a lot of times that's your inner child coming up and coming out
Hmm.
to allow you to be more free and have a better experience as well.
And actually play. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, there's times when you probably will hear your guides, but I think you would be aware that the voice sounds very different. Like it almost sounds like it's coming from somewhere else.
Oh, that's a good way to explain it.
Yeah.
When I'm talking to my higher self or my inner children, it's almost like somebody's right here.
Hmm.
But if I'm talking to a guide or a deity or an entity, even if it's for self or for clients, they're like far away. They're like on the other side of the room.
Hmm.
You have to like dig a little bit deeper to hear those answers from
Yeah.
them. They're
And
also
if
coming from higher dimensional spaces sometimes, like your higher self is typically in this dimension with you unless you're talking about your oversoul, which is like a whole different thing. But they're in this dimensional space with you where these higher ethereal beings or your ancestors who are like much lower in frequency. That's why it's a little bit more, I don't want to call it difficult, but there's a lot more layers in between you and them. And so
yeah.
that's why it's a little bit harder to hear them sometimes.
And in the end, when you're working with a client and you're channeling information, do not get caught up on where this is coming from and who is talking to me. Just stay in the flow state and talk and just know that you are bringing information in, it's flowing through you and it's going out to them as if you're just giving them advice, and realize that there's a lot more going on in the background.
Yeah, when I'm talking to clients, I have never really I have never really what's the word I'm looking for? Advertised myself as somebody who will give you specific guides
Yeah.
that are speaking with you because at the end of the day, all the guides and your higher self and your inner children, they're all you anyway in different perspectives, right? So if you're coming from that level of understanding, it's not as important like whom it's coming from. And a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I want to know what my guides' names are. And that's for your human brain
Hmm.
because in your ego brain,
Yeah.
most of the time the guides don't have names because that's a human thing. That
Yeah.
is a lower, not lower dimensional, like as in like lower vibes. the,
Yeah.
the, they transcend above that. Okay, they are free form energy beings that don't necessarily have the same attachments as we do. Sometimes it is nice to know what they go by because sometimes that makes it a little bit easier to connect. But I most of the time when I'm channeling for clients, I just refer to everything as their higher self or their spirit
Hmm.
team. I said they're
Yeah.
collectively speaking together.
Yeah.
Now, there are some times when people will have very specific guides come through. Maybe it's a mantis being, maybe it's Archangel Michael, whoever, okay, Kali, whomever. If that guide needs me to tell them specifically it's coming from them is because
Hmm.
it's going to help them in some way in their ascension journey. But I don't sit here trying to Rolodex and look through all these different
Yeah.
spirit guides. I
Yeah.
just say, this is coming from your higher self. This is
Yeah.
coming from your spirit team.
Yeah.
This is coming from your Akashic records. This is coming from your
Yeah.
inner children, right? But I don't always try and splice it up to a million different spirit guides. Have
Yeah.
you had the same experience?
Yeah. I don't even, when I'm tapped in, I don't even pay attention to, I'm seeing stuff and I'm sharing what I'm seeing. And on occasion I will be like, they okay, they just said it's like you need to know this part, or you need to, like it's typically the
Like you worked with an Egyptian deity.
yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like and I'm seeing and I'm seeing this happening, and I've been describing it for a little while, and then I will perceive that a message or a word, or like you need to remember this or whatever. They I think I typically say they really want you to know. Um I've had I can often tell someone like what their galactic heritage is, or who they work with, or who's comes in and spends time with them on certain missions, or like things that they're working on in their life. But and on occasion they will give me some type of name. And I think that's because the person I'm working with will do well by having a way to address them, because it's going to help
Yes.
establish the connection. Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes guides have names that you cannot pronounce.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they'll tell me and I'm like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to verbalize that. And so the guide will just say, okay, tell him to call me Fred
Yeah.
or
And
tell him to call me
we don't
Martha or something. Like,
we don't even have it right in what we're discovering through ancient archaeology. Like
right.
there's a really good chance that Osiris is also Zeus, is also Jesus, is also Buddha. Like, yeah,
Yeah, there's like
it doesn't
overlapping
matter.
archetypes. Yeah. Yeah.
We were like before we started, we were saying that labels and boxes don't help anyone.
Yeah. I will say that if you are somebody who specifically wants to do that for people, like you specifically want to channel people's spirit guides and figure out them very selectively, like, okay, well, this is one guide and they have this type of energy and this is their name, and do that for people, because there are people that do that as a modality. I would say your best avenue to explore then is to learn about as many guides and deities and different type of entities, and just do a lot of research about a lot of different mythology, um, because the more that you can inundate your energy field with guides that there's already a lot of information about in the collective, then it's going to be a lot more easy for you to perceive things. Like you build your own, I know Rolodex is kind of an outdated terminology, but file cabinet, if you will, like files of different guides, because I used to do that work. I used to be a lot more in helping people like identify who was helping them. And let's say that I learn about Archangel Michael. Okay. If I know a lot about him, it's a lot easier for me to have other angels come in and identify them, because I've gotten used to what an angel frequency feels like. And then it's like, oh, well, there's this one and this one and this one and this one. And then I would go to Google that angel, and it would be an angel that's in the collective that I didn't have prior knowledge about.
Very often when I say that I see something, the person will say, "Oh, I that's my angel. I work with them," or "That's my dragon," or like the confirmation usually comes in pretty quickly, because I'm just kind of describing what I see. The th- we
Or
can
it'll pop in for them as well. Like it'll
Yeah.
their higher
It's
self
real.
will give them a download.
I spent my whole life reading about mythology and ancient Egypt and and everything, because I truly enjoyed it. So
Mhm.
if you truly enjoy that, expose yourself to it. You can even get tarot cards with the ascended masters. You can,
Yeah,
like
that's
there's
how I
so
started
yeah,
with helping with people with spirit guides. I still have it to this day. It has a deck full of ascended masters, and I researched about every single one and started
yeah,
trying to intentionally work with them. And then I started pulling in clients who also had those persons on their spirit teams.
yeah,
And that is a great way to do that as well. I think that's
yes.
great advice. Yeah.
So if you're getting excited listening to that part, then that's for you. If not, just go in there and see what you see and just describe it.
Yeah. I will say something that helped me differentiate between these different facets of self, these different perceptions of self. Okay. Um, I would, because it's all coming through your voice sometimes. Like some people have clairaudient abilities where they can hear all these different voices, but most of the time people just hear one thing through your stream of
Yeah.
consciousness. I would ask my higher self and my inner children and all of my spirit guides, can you all talk to me in a different tone, in different personality traits, in different inflections, and in different accents? And as soon as I asked them all to do that, I could hear all of them much more clearly. It wasn't just me. It would sound a little bit different than what I would say. They would use a different type of languaging. They would use keywords. Like I started to notice, like, oh no, this is not just me. Like I would not speak like this.
Yes. But yes, but you also have to make room for the fact that every time someone starts channeling for other people, it's all going to it has to filter through in the way that you're going to be able to perceive it, and then you're going to have to be able to explain it to the other person. Their guides are going to be giving it to you in a way that you can filter it as well. And so just because we're talking about this and it's preparing you for what's coming, yours is going to be very personalized. And
Yes.
you know, and it's going to work with what you have with your abilities. Then once you really start feeling comfortable and start to really remember who you are and you step into this and you can feel confident saying, I do this, I'm capable of this, I do this, a bunch of other new stuff's going to come in. So, you know, don't hesitate to just embrace all of it and not be afraid of it. And when every time I do a session, something new comes in and I acknowledge, oh, I've never seen that before, but it's really fluid. It doesn't like jar me or startle me or anything. I'm like, oh, I do this now, you know, I can, yeah. So in the end, you are going to have your own style. And the more that you, instead of pushing and trying to hear something because other people hear it or see something because other people see it, don't worry about any of that stuff. That's you comparing yourself to another person. That's you wanting, you already may have an ability, but you're blocking yourself from it because you think it's supposed to look like the way the other person does when they channel or they describe things.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice. Let me do that. I'm going to circle back around to something else you said too.
Yeah.
So, channeling looks so vastly different for everybody. The way that I channel is so different from other people. And one of the biggest things that blocked me up was like, oh, well, I'm not doing it like this.
Yeah.
And when I just said, you know what, I'm going to do it how it feels right to me. And
Yeah.
I'm going to do the way that feels fun to me. And I'm going to trust myself.
Yeah.
That's when everything really started to open up because you're not meant to channel like other people. And there's a whole group of people that need your channeling exactly how you channel.
We are way further along than a ton of books that have already been written.
Yes, facts.
We we are we have already stepped onto the new earth.
And she
We're
means
not,
as a collective timeline too, not
yeah,
just me and
yeah,
Kimberly.
yeah.
That's a collective
No, no, yeah,
timeline.
like all of it.
Yeah, a
If
collective
you're
timeline.
in this class, if you're
Yeah.
watching this, you have chosen to step onto the new earth. You are not staying behind, stuck in 3D. You are on a very fast trajectory towards your abilities coming online and expanding them. So this is once all you need to do is step into it and own it, and it's going to happen. It's going to feel very natural. And then as you get going and build momentum, more facets are going to come in. You are not going to be only a deity channeler or only a chakra balancer. Like there's no way. There's no way. We are multidimensional. We have the ability to do things that we haven't even perceived yet. There's no
Absolutely.
limit. There's no limit. So you might get five different abilities at one time. And so when you go to channel something, you realize you're watching a movie, you're you're receiving a full message, even though it appears that you're only witnessing something in front of you, but you're getting like a whole download. And then you turn around and you start sharing that. Don't even stop and wonder where it's coming from because you're using a bunch of different clairs to pull that in, right? And so, okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's also another thing that was blocking me up for a long time was saying like, oh well, I said that I'm doing this session, so that means that I'm not supposed to be utilizing these tools and resources and these modalities. But as soon as I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna let everything flow out
Hmm.
and get out of my own way.
Yeah,
And
who
just
am I to
you
decide?
right,
Yeah, yeah,
utilize whatever gifts. Like I during sessions will pull in like 10 different modalities of things because that's what the person needs.
yeah,
And it just goes how it's supposed to go, right? But I have to also trust myself at the same time of like, well, obviously I was learning these things or re-remembering these things for a reason. It's okay if you are utilizing multitudes of tools and resources in sessions or even with yourself. Like it doesn't have to look like one
yeah.
specific path.
And half the time it's not supposed to make sense to us because when we share something, when we're like, this is what I'm seeing, but I don't know why, there that person's going to be like, oh, that's because this is my, you know, pet or that I
Mhm.
had when I was, or whatever it is, right? And so you just have to say it. You just have to share it and you're going to get your confirmations back. Like you don't worry. And if you're working with somebody who is um I guess well okay, so that would be segueing into a different topic, but choose who you're going to work with carefully in the beginning because you don't want someone that's going to doubt you the whole time. You don't want someone that has a tendency to be critical and negative and look for the fight or look for the negativity or look for where you screwed up. You are not going into this because you want to prove something to anybody. You're going into this because you have a gift. So start working with people who are very supportive. Like you don't want them giving you false information, but
Yeah.
you do need them to be supportive. Do need them to be open to what you're going to share, that they're going to sit with it for a minute and be like, oh, okay, that's what it is. That's also open to the fact that they might not even digest this for a week, that something you told them might not even happen for a month, but when it does, it's going to wow both of you. You need to work with people that are going to be supportive. Like work with each other, that you have this class. This is your group. This is your council. Hit each other up and work with each other too.
So, well, let me write this down before I forget. Okay. Okay. So that is a big lesson that I have learned as well of I just need to say the thing because I don't let my ego mind get in the way of like, okay, well, I don't know if this is true or accurate or all these different things. That's not for me to figure out. Like I know that I'm an open channel and what's supposed to come through is going to come through. And I just say it.
Yeah.
And even if I don't get immediate confirmation, a lot of times they'll tell me like weeks or months later, like, oh, but even if I don't get the confirmation, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because they needed to hear it. Sometimes you're saying things to different facets of themselves that they have not reached in consciousness yet. Sometimes you're talking to their inner children. Sometimes you're talking to their teens. Sometimes you're talking to a younger version of them in their 20s or their 30s. Sometimes it's not, or you're talking to future them. Sometimes it's not always for the person that you're speaking with in the present, but you have to be confident in what I say is supposed to come through and they need to hear it. Period. And that's
Yeah.
it. And now
As
I will
long
say, when we were talking about before about how you were talking about filter lenses of you're having to work through like higher self and guides and all these things, and you have to personalize it when you're speaking to persons. There's a lot of times where people's higher selves and their guides are very blunt, very, very blunt. And they are not being very tasteful and tactful with their words because they want you to listen and hear what they have to say. And there's a lot of times where I will soften what they're saying because I know that's not going to be the best way to deliver it for them or people's inner children. And that is kind of what we were harking back to before in our channeling part one of your higher self and your guides also have their own biases and they're also only one perspective.
Mhm.
I have my own perspectives because I'm an energy healer and a coach, and I have guides and higher selves as well. And so sometimes when you're working with clients, sometimes you might need to be a little more tactful with the way that you deliver things from people's higher selves and guides. And that's okay too. Not saying to completely change the messaging, but it's also okay to figure out the best way to deliver that for somebody, especially if you're talking about inner child stuff or like teen stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so what was I just thinking about? Sorry, my
No,
son
you're
walked
good.
out and totally like
I,
I was like I heard everything that you said and I was like ready to
it's okay.
express
I
something
do
back.
have one more point that
Yeah,
might
good,
swing it
good,
back around for you. Okay, so
good.
when you when you were saying, hey, when you first start channeling, either with yourself or with other people, like if you're at the beginning stages of this, when you are out here in your imagination and in the ethers and you are trying to figure out who's inner child, who's higher self, who are guides, that's having to utilize a lot more of your energy. And
Hmm.
that's having to it really you start getting in your own mind and you start getting kind of like just tripping yourself up, getting in your own way. Sometimes it is better for you to just say, I'm just going to listen to the one voice.
Yes.
Like if you're brand new to it, because even me, who has been doing this for a long time, and I'm sure for you, when we have deities and beings and all these different versions of people and stuff, it takes a second to to filter down that information, right? Like it takes a lot of energy to do that and to transcribe. And I'm in here in my mind having these conversations of like, I need you to say this more clearly, talking to a being or entity. Like
And it's
it
fast.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like hitting you with all this stuff. So
Yeah.
it's a skill that you have to learn with your clairaudient abilities about how to fine tune these frequencies and how to hear things more clearly. So if you're at the beginning stages, like it's okay for you to just jumble them kind of all up together and say like, hey, I just need y'all to speak in one voice. Maybe you
Yes.
do speak in a different personality or a different tone or different inflections or different accents, but an issue now that I'm remembering when I first started talking to my spirit team, there was too much coming through, and I was like, I just need y'all to speak as one being. I literally cannot understand anything because it's too much coming through. I just need you to speak as one and what is in the best alignment with me right now. That really helped me be able to hear more clearly. Because if you do have clairaudient abilities and you are awakened to that, you might be overwhelmed. And that might not be
Okay.
why you can tap in because you got a room full of voices trying to speak to you.
So when I got my ability, um, I got okay. There. Okay. Let me do this in a linear way. I when I was working with you and I was booking sessions with you 2020 or 2019, I got fascinated with light language and I was talking to you about that and you said, "Well, you're going to be doing it." And I believed you, but I couldn't even perceive how that it would even start because it's such a um unusual ability.
Mhm.
A lot of people have it. But
It's
except
very hard to
for
quantify.
right, like I'm
Yeah.
like, thank God for Tyel. You know, like at least there's someone that was doing it, you know, that I
Yeah.
could relate to. But when you said that, I believed you and I thought it was really cool, but I also had to just let it go because if I fixated on it, it wasn't going to bring it in. I liked the idea of it, but I was like, you know what? When it's time, it's going to happen. And I just kind of let it go. So then, like 6 months later, I totally start doing it like I knew I would. I just didn't, and it's because I let it go like a manifestation or like
Yeah,
the law of attraction,
non-attachment.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that it came in. So I started doing it, wasn't even sure what I was doing with it. I know I received it for a reason. Clearly, it was for me to do it for other people. I wasn't ready for that yet, whatever. I was on my own journey. So then when I finally started doing it with people, I realized that some visualizations would come through. And so I would just share a little bit here and there. And then I realized that my version is like things are being shown to me. And then as soon as I got used to it, it expanded and it opened up greatly. So now it's like I enter into a scene constantly, right? What I didn't know, but this occurred to me when you were talking that I should bring this up. I didn't realize that my entry into this journey was going to be along the chakra system, which prior to doing this, I understood what the chakra system is, and I would put on meditation videos that were specific to each one or tones or whatever. But I wouldn't say that I was ever really like into chakras or like balancing my chakras or talked about it very much, right? But when I understood that, I remember Tyel saying that light language works along the chakra system. to balance the energy centers. And I thought, you know what, that actually makes a lot of sense because most of it seems I seem to work in a column in front of me. So when I started channeling for people, we would go into the different chakras, and it still happens on a regular basis, right? Well, what that does, and the reason I'm bringing this up, maybe I'm going to use chakras because it's easy. It's easy to explain it this way, but you can do it in a different way. You can say, we're going to go into your heart space. We're going to go into your head space. We're going to go into your third eye space. If you need to compartmentalize to be able to bring a focus into things that need to be worked on, that might be better for you. So for me, I will realize because my hands go there or something, and then like my hand will get stuck right here. I'm like, well, apparently we're in the third eye right now, you know. But I go into the third eye, I typically see sacred geometry. So I describe that. When I go into your crown, I typically see a color. I can see if it's kind of closed off or if it's vast, things will happen up there. When I go into your solar plexus, that's when I tend to see things associated with your ancestors. We're very often in a cave-like setting. There, a lot of times there's alchemy that happens in there. And then when we go down into your sacral and your root, I will see very often a small child. We know that's your inner child. So because I go into these different spaces to have, because I'm an activator and I clear trauma and I work on expansion, I'm going into separate places. So I'm seeing different things that are tuning up that area. It's very easy for me to identify who I'm working with and what I'm working with at the time. Right.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah. I
okay.
was gonna say, which is so funny because it feels like that I've been doing this for like 100 years, and so I forget about things. And so
Yeah.
when you just said that, I was like, oh yeah.
You
When
used to
I
do
first
that. Yeah.
started doing Reiki sessions with people, which my Reiki sessions look different. Like some,
Hmm.
and there's no right or wrong. Okay, just the way that I did Reiki sessions is I'm talking to the person the entire time. I'm not just sending energy to them like it was a co-collaborative experience. But when I started doing Reiki and my multidimensional chakra scans, both of those, I went through people's chakras. I said, okay,
Yeah.
we're going to go into your root chakra. I'm going to see what's going on there. I'm going to go into your sacral, and then
Hmm.
just worked up the system. That gave me a lot more direction and a lot more clarity because
Hmm.
and that's why we spent so much time on the chakras in this course. Okay. Because yes, different chakras can hold similar pain and trauma as others, but for the most
Hmm.
part, okay, we're like, okay, well, the throat chakra is over communication. Okay, like we know that, or the solar plexus is over determination and motivation. So you're pointing your perception very specifically at something, so it makes it a lot easier to read. So I think that is excellent advice. Like not everybody's going to do that. You don't have to do that,
Hmm.
obviously, but you and I both did that, and it was very, very beneficial. And eventually I didn't have to do that anymore, just like you. Like there was a time where I was like, okay, I don't need to do that anymore. Like I can
Yeah.
just read people's aura and their light body and their Akashic records. Like,
Yeah.
but when I first started doing both of those, extremely, extremely helpful.
Yes. And if, okay, now again, you don't have to do chakras, but what you can say is now we're going to go into your,
Or your emotional body, your spiritual body, your
y-
physical body, your mental body, and check those.
yeah. Yeah. Like, okay, let's go into your third eye.
Compartmentalize things.
Yeah. So, so if you, for example, we're going to go into your, I typically see the root and sacral attached. Sometimes they're separate, but typically they're attached. When you go to that area, you're helping your client put their focus also into a very specific place because right when you're there, you're about to do some, um, you're about to fix some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that is our fight or flight. That is where we store memories that we don't want to deal with. And so when you're helping your client, the best thing you can do is help them unlock something and get rid of it so that it's gone and it's not blocking them anymore. So when you see a child hiding from and hearing parents arguing in the other room or whatever, that's clearly their inner child. You bring that up. They say yes, that happened a lot, whatever. And then you can kind of talk through it. They're really in with you there. They are now their higher self has stepped in to help them work through that. Like they're not doing it alone anymore. They're being assisted. They're about to like have a big moment. And then you can say, okay, we're moving them out of that room. They never have to go there again. We're going to have them stand up straight. They're not going to be physically or mentally or emotionally abused anymore. They're going to close that door and never look back. You just you have the ability to help someone change their life at that moment because you took them to a very specific place. And then the rest of it can be light, okay, now we're going to go up to your heart center now, or your heart chakra. We're going to visualize pink. We're going to see a big fluffy heart right in the center. It's going to start spinning. We're going to see some beautiful golden sparkles and dusts that are going to come in, and those are light codes. It's going to help with expansion, and it's going to fill the space where that trauma was, like when you take them on that journey, even if it's just things that are coming to you that you think would be a really helpful image right now, you're channeling that. That's okay. But when you can take them through these different spaces and see those things, it helps them put their focus where it needs to be too. Because when they're just listening to a story and they're listening to you describe something, it's very entertaining, but it might not be where their focus on their body needs to be at that moment. Like you need everything there. You need the visual, you need the focus, you need the tap, the delve within. You want them to feel it. You want them to feel the energy moving through their heart. And so when you can take somebody there to work on something, um it's very beneficial.
Oh
It's
yeah, even to this day when I do inner child healing sessions specifically, or like work with teens, and I'm going on a shamanic journey with them. Like I'm taking them into themselves, not just us having a conversation. This is like
Yeah.
some deeper Akasha work. I always take them through their heart chakra because that's where a lot of pain and grief and regret and shame and all that stuff is held within there. And it's more concentrated if I'm telling them, go in your heart chakra.
I've
Now they're
seen
like, now
bots
they're like,
unlock. Yeah.
yeah, now they're
Yeah.
like focused very much right here, and they can actually have a physical sensation alongside the inner child healing experience. Like they're viscerally, physically feeling that trauma and PTSD coming out of their body because I have told them, like, focus in this one spot on your body while we are doing this. So even if you do it with the chakras, like root, sacral, solar, like they're going to feel it more intensely if you have it
Mhm.
specifically centered. And when you were talking about chakras, like another thing that you can do when you're talking to people is what is your intention? Like, what are you trying to do? Right.
Mhm.
So if you don't do chakras, you can say in your mind's eye, like, okay, I want to speak with this person's inner children and teens. I want to speak with this person's higher self. I want to speak with their spirit guides. Now it's getting even more concentrated.
Mhm.
There's
And
times when I
where
flip
they
channels. Like, okay, now I'm talking
yeah.
to higher self. Now I'm talking to inner kids. Now I'm talking like, but you have to
Yeah.
set that intention behind it of like, who am I trying to reach right now?
And if you really like the idea of that, set your session up to 4 parts. And you in over the next hour, we're going to spend 15 minutes. We're going to take 10 minutes to tap in, okay? And so let's just say I don't like, actually time is very limiting, but you would go in, quickly get them into a flow state. You can, you often play a meditation, a quick like affirmation meditation,
Yeah, it's like a
but
2 minute
but
meditation at the
yeah,
beginning.
but
Yeah,
in
to
the
help them
beginning,
drop in.
not only do they drop in, it connects you,
Oh
because
yeah,
you it's
it
like
does.
you both go into this space together, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
for just a
yeah.
pause, if nobody has seen that, I always do a 2 minute meditation for every single one of my sessions because just like Kimberly was saying, it helps ground them, it helps center them, and it helps us connect not only on a physical level but an etheric level. And it's just two
Mhm.
minutes, and they
Yeah.
feel completely different afterwards. They're
Yeah.
like, "Oh wow, I feel great. I feel zen."
Well, they're a lot of times people are nervous and excited to go in
Yes,
to have the session with you, and so they don't know what to do with themselves. So
yes,
if you're
that's why we do the meditation.
yeah, so you're guiding them, right? So now so
Yes.
now now you're there. Okay, so if if you it is if you only have an hour to give, you do have to pay attention to time. Okay, so if you have a silent timer on your computer or your phone or something, that would be beneficial. What you could do prior is say, um, you could set up your different ways you're going to do your sessions. If they pick, I want to tune into my guides and my higher selves and whatever, then make 15-minute increments for that. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm now we're going into your higher. I'd like to speak to your higher selves. We're going to visit your crown, or we're going to visit your intuition, or whatever, your center. When you are taking them there, it's helping them put the like you're taking them on a journey, but they need to assist you on that journey too, because you're both in this. It's not just you.
It
Yeah,
is a co-collaborative
yeah,
experience.
you might be talking the whole time, but you are only seeing what you're seeing. All this work is for them. You are only a conduit for information that's coming through from your own experience, your own higher selves, but mainly from them. And it happens very quickly, but like when you're talking about the heart space, I've seen where it looks like a locked box, and
Mhm.
so my intuition told me, tell them to imagine a key, like imagine this like big beautiful key that you like, and go, now we're going to go and unlock it. It sounds so fantasy, but it doesn't matter. Like if you
Yeah, you're
saw something.
channeling that though.
Yeah,
Like just like you
yeah,
said earlier, like there's a lot of times where Kimberly's really good at this, by the way, but where you create a story and you create a narrative to walk them through because as humans, we do very well with imagery and analogies and symbols. And so it sounds like to you that you're making it up, but you're actually channeling that from their higher self. It's not like there's so many times that I have given people imagery that I would never use in my I'm
yes,
not even good at
yeah,
okay, I'm not gonna say that because we're not gonna limit
yeah,
ourselves, okay?
yeah,
That's not my area of what I delve into. Like I'm not that type of storyteller in my regular 3D life, but when I'm in there channeling with somebody, I'll be taking you on a whole adventure, but it's not coming from me.
yeah. Like
It's
I'm
coming
not a
from your
race
higher
car
self.
driver. I don't watch car
Right.
races, anything. But if a bunch of cars come in, I'm just going to share it with you because this is what
Yeah.
it's going to work for you.
I'll
Yeah,
create a whole movie production
yeah,
for you, right? But
yeah,
it's not my information.
yeah.
So don't trip yourself
And
up and be like, "Oh, I'm just making this up." No, it's exactly what they need to hear from their higher self.
and record everything so that they can keep it because they can revisit it constantly, right?
I
But if
always
you,
recommend that because people get so invested in what's happening in the present moment that they aren't thinking of they're not what's the word I'm looking for?
it's like they're watching a movie.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're so like kind of like detached from what's happening. Like it's good for them to be able to come back and watch the recording because they're going to have a lot more insights. They're going to have a lot more downloads. They might have a lot more questions and need to book another session
Hmm.
with you
Hmm. Hmm.
because they're so in the moment and present that they're like, oh dang, I had all these other things I want to talk about too. And that gives them a way to review and instill everything on a much deeper level as well. Like I have always recorded all
Hmm.
sessions, not to post on YouTube and stuff, right? But to give them,
Yeah.
right?
And tell them, put it on before you fall asleep.
Oh, that's a good
Like
idea.
let things unlock. Listen to it when you're on a dog walk. Listen to it while you're
That's a
watching.
great
Like
idea.
like you don't have to go into this um like intense dramatic meditational state to re-listen to it. No, you put that stuff on when your brain's working in the background,
Hmm.
when you're doing stuff, because you'll hear things in different ways when you listen to it a few times. Um Also, uh okay, so when you for me, I'll make I statements here. When I channel, I am 100% in the moment with you when it's happening. As soon as it's over, it's like I was in a different time and space. So
Okay.
I'm not going to remember everything that I told you. But if we start talking about it a month later, I will go right back there.
Oh yeah, I've had that like three
Yeah.
years later. I have a session.
Yeah.
That happened the other day. I didn't have a session with somebody for like 2.5 years, and
Yeah.
then as soon as we started talking, I was like, "Oh, how has this been? How has this been in
Yeah.
your life? And this and this and this and this." Like it all
I'm
came
like,
forward in my
yeah.
consciousness, and she was like, "How did you remember all that?" I'm like, "It just
Yeah.
it saved back there until like I need
Well,
it."
because you're in a different time and space when you're
You
channeling
are,
it. So when you connect back into that space, that stuff is still there.
yeah,
So if you want to learn more about yourself, listen to your own sessions
for sure.
without criticizing yourself. Like you
Yes,
can learn, yeah,
objectively, like, oh, look at the past version of me that was in this
yeah,
session.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Like
But
we love her or we love him. Like that's
you're gonna
fabulous. We're not going to judge them.
you're gonna impress yourself though. You're going
Yes,
to wow yourself. You're like, oh my God, I was really good at that. You're not gonna remember that well after the first few times because it's gonna be a blur. It's gonna be like you just went through.
oh, do you mean rewatching as the practitioner? as the
Yeah.
healer. Oh,
Yeah.
let me tell you, because I have watched sessions where I thought that I was just like horrible at what I was doing. I'm just
Oh,
like,
never.
oh my God, right? I watch back every single workshop and live and masterclass that I do. And a lot of times I will watch back sessions with people because I sit there, I'm like, dang, like I'm legit.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I'm super powerful. Like, wow, I'm an amazing channeler. Like, wow, I'm super psychic. Like, that is fantastic advice, Kimberly.
Yeah. Like really. Oh,
Yes.
okay. Okay. So imagine you go to Disneyland and you get on the Alice in Wonderland ride and you are probably on it for 3 minutes. Okay. In those 3 minutes, you're going to enter in and you're going to see the rose garden and the angry queen, and you're going to see the Chester cat up in the tree. And then you're going to see her drinking or eating a cookie to get small and drinking her drink to get big. Like you're going to see all these things, right? It's all going to happen in 3 minutes. You're going to be excited and enjoying watching all of this creativity in front of you. And then when the ride's over, you're going to make sure who you're with is with you. You're like, oh, do we need to go to the bathroom? Are we going to get a drink? Whatever. You just you were just totally tapped in and enjoying and excited about what you were doing for 3 minutes, and then you walk out and there's reality. Now, later on, when you're driving home or you're checking into your hotel and you're relaxed, you might be like, oh, that ride was really cool. And you start remembering aspects of it. And then the next day you're like, oh, I just thought of that Cheshire cat again. Like that, those 3 minutes are going to be something that you're going to think about at different times. You're going to call back something, or like I'm doing right now, sharing it in a story. But if I had recorded that ride, I would remember so much more
Mm-hmm.
of what I witnessed and what made me happy. And that, oh, I really liked that part. Or this, oh, you know what? That was my favorite part. If you
Or you can
listen,
make adjustments.
yes,
If you didn't
yes,
like something, if you're like, oh, well,
yes,
next time I need to explain this a little bit more, or I need to change my tone, or I
yeah,
need to, all these different things from a non-judgmental space
yeah, yeah,
of more
yes,
so like,
please.
how can this practitioner, speaking of self, like, how can that practitioner improve their skills?
And if you have trouble being hypercritical, take that off and use the lens of you are watching your inner child do this. And
Oh, yeah.
or like you're watching something that you protect and care about and
Uh-huh.
nurture doing this, and you want to witness them growing.
Yes, like when I watch my lives and master classes back, and I have to make sure that I'm watching an older version of myself, and I'm not going to sit here and tell her like, "Oh, you did a terrible job."
Yeah.
We're not going to do that.
Yeah.
I will say that while we're talking about recording sessions, not everybody wants their session recorded. I'm going to put that out there. Like some people do not want that, and we need to respect their wishes. On my scheduling app, I say, "Do you want your session recorded?" 9 times out of 10, they do because they do want that back for themselves. But if they say no, we do need to respect that as well.
And that's fine because that's going to be one out of a
But it's,
hundred.
yeah, it's most
Yeah.
people want it recorded for themselves, right? And if we don't want to be posting people's, I want to say this too, okay, just we don't want to be posting people's sessions on social medias unless they give you specific
Hmm.
permission. Okay, we're going to get into
Yeah.
that later when we talk about working with clients in like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
section.
Yeah.
Right, but I just want to
But
say that. Okay.
and you don't have to
Um,
listen to everything that you record, but it maybe with some of the clients that you enjoyed more, or you
yeah,
feel like you even feel like you
you
grew
were very
as a,
confident.
yeah,
Yeah.
watch those back because it's not a I love me fest. It's like, wow, like validate yourself.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
validation helps, even if it's like self-validation. And it helps you become a better energy healer and a practitioner and a coach to watch yourself in real time. Like you can give yourself your own feedback, right? Or give yourself confidence boosts.
Dude, you'll
Um,
learn about yourself.
mhm.
That's really cool.
Um,
Okay, next subject.
well, I want to say before I forgot to, when you were talking about not forcing your gifts, right? I do want, and we're going to talk about this in just a minute, but one of the reasons that people are quote unquote blocked up, and it's not being blocked, everybody needs to stop saying they're blocked because that is blocking you. Okay. um, one of the reasons that sometimes it's difficult to channel is because you're working through a lot of layers of things that have happened to your human and probably to your inner children or your teens, or from religious and cultural and societal programming or fear mongering or magic. People say magic being evil, or, there's a lot of different layers that are having to defragment and deprogram while you're learning your channeling abilities. So there's not necessarily something wrong with you because you don't have full access. You got to bear in mind, like, all of that stuff has to be healed in tandem with you being able to have full access to your gifts and abilities. And that's why shadow work and trauma work and all of these different things, that's why we spent so much time on that in the beginning of this course. And I will say that every day. The more that you release out of your energy field, the more open it is to the etheric realms and the cosmic realms, and like speaking to your higher self and your inner children. Like, that's literally the way to unlock these things. Heavy trauma and PTSD programming, all that stuff, it's very, very, very heavy and dense and takes up a lot of space in your fields. But you also have to give
Yeah.
yourself grace and compassion. Like, you can't sometimes like just snap your fingers and all that stuff's gone. Like, it takes, sometimes it's instantaneous. Sometimes you can just say, okay, I'm done with that. But other times you've got inner children and teens inside that dealt with that programming and that trauma for years and years and years and years and years. We don't want to force them into facing all of that stuff immediately, because that's scary.
Those are the good questions to put down in the thing right now too. If like some of you are going to be not, I don't think it's, triggered is a useful word, but I think it has such a negative connotation. When we get triggered, it's an area we need to work on. If what Sage just said made you really feel something, like you almost cringed within, or you felt vulnerable, or um something shut down real quick, that's telling you that you still have some work to do, and that can really get in the way of your self-confidence. um once you work through that, so if you have questions about that, ask, because I feel like somebody's going to ask after
You
what you
feel
just
it?
said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um
Okay.
but what because it was really important what you did. I even got like a few
Oh no, I did too. Even when I was
yeah.
saying it, there was
Okay.
pieces and facets of me that were like, ugh, because I'm still
Yeah.
working through stuff. Like, I'm
Yeah.
still doing programming stuff.
Well, that was actually the only thing that I was going to point out, and then I realized I had to say that, is you and I in the last year have both said, "Oh my God, I totally thought I already dealt with this."
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah, all the
But
time.
we done. We're
Yeah.
done. What? We're done
Yeah.
with this.
Yeah.
No, you're not, because you're a multifaceted human being and also a multidimensional magical
Hmm.
being who is experiencing their multidimensionality through a human
Hmm.
avatar, and you're like this all the time. Okay. So say you are way further along. You're 2 years into your ascension. You're sitting here like us. You've done this for quite a while. You're doing good. And then something just comes up and smacks you in the face that you really thought that you've already dealt with. You're going to be able to handle it differently because your self-awareness is going to be so much stronger. Your ability to remove yourself emotionally, remove your ego, you're going to be able to do the work much quicker because you did all the shadow work and all of the trauma work at the beginning of this course. It really is. No one, we are not at all saying you need to go have a dark night of the soul. Like, that's
Yeah.
coming whether you want it or
I'm
not.
more
Like, it's
saying take it day by day. Right?
yeah, yeah, that's
Don't
okay.
launch and propel yourself
Yeah,
into like a
yeah,
tower moment.
yeah.
Yeah.
But but once you've gotten a lot of that behind you, which you will, that's great. When these things do come up, just know that you're going to be so much more well equipped for it. It's okay to have a human moment. That's what your friends are for. Call the right person. Call somebody that understands when you're like, I am going through it, and you don't have to explain too much. Like, it's okay. Because when you do the work from a much more advanced level, you understand finally the last few components of why that still is sticking around, why you got triggered after hearing something for the 20th time. You were fine the 19 times when you heard it, but then when you heard it for the 20th time, something unlocked, and it hit you, and it's because now you're ready to deal with it.
Oh yeah, I will say that, and I've said this in previous videos, that the uphill battle is the toughest when you first start
Yeah.
doing like clear out work like that and trauma and shadow work. It is very intense. I went through an extremely intense journey, and so did Kimberly at the beginning stages. But once you onboard a lot of tools and resources and learn how to regulate your central nervous system and how to process your emotions and all the things that we have been talking about in the beginning of this course, it is so much easier now. Life, anytime that
Oh,
I get triggered or something,
yeah.
like, uh, we're done with it immediately, almost
Yeah.
immediately. Sometimes, okay, so sometimes I'll be calling Kimberly and leaving long voice notes about things that
That's
trigger
okay.
me.
Yeah.
But I'm able to traverse through things like nobody's business now. And I'm able to work in the etheric realms and the cosmic realms and help so many clients and like do all this stuff and just like
Hmm.
live in a completely different reality. There's a huge payoff to doing this, like
Hmm.
huge, huge payoff. Like I cannot even explain
You're
to
going to
you.
help
You just got to get through like the first chapters of it.
people are going to be amazed at your ability to help them work their shit out in under 5 minutes too, by the way. Okay, can we
Oh
just
yeah,
give
that's a
a
beautiful gift that you get as well.
can we just say a hallelujah for voice notes and how much they help
Oh
of
my gosh,
of
yes.
having somebody that you can be like, this is going to be a long one, and you just get it out, because
Or
when
even
you
voice noting yourself.
yeah,
I want to
when
say
you
that
hit
too. If you don't have a
oh
friend,
yeah,
because not everybody has a friend,
yeah,
there's a time when I used to just voice note myself, and then I would listen back to it, and I'll be like, "Girl, you being very catastrophizing right now,"
yeah, yeah,
or "You're being very valid for the ways that you feel,
okay,
and it's okay that you feel that way," and it gets all that energy out of your body instead of just stuffing it
yeah.
down.
Okay, so you just helped me with the next part. When you said, "Girl, you're catastrophizing," or "Girl, you whatever," that is your higher self.
Oh yeah, then you're stepping up
That,
as a higher self. That's
there's your
that's a
higher self.
great way to work out your
Yeah,
stuff, is
yeah.
listening to yourself talk about what's going on, because now you are the higher self.
When in your head or out loud you say, "Girl, you need to stop that," or "Hey, that's victim," you just put yourself into a victim mode, or "Hey, you just allowed somebody to take your power away from you." Who with that voice, that's your higher self.
Oh yeah, she's always, or they, not she, because
Yeah,
people have male WhatsApp. I always am like, girl,
yeah. Whoever it
anybody's
is,
higher self.
however you talk to yourself, whether it's in
Yes.
your head, when you're listening to somebody and you're like, they're in a victim state, da 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 da, you're getting that from their, like you're perceiving it, right? But the moment I'm not saying the negative voice, not when you say, you know, you binged eating, or you don't look good in that. Like, that's not the voice I'm talking about. That's not that is a component of you, but that's like your inner
Your higher
critic.
self will
Yeah.
never say anything to you that's
Mhm.
not positive and encouraging. And
Yeah.
sometimes it'll be real difficult, the things they're saying to you, like it'll be kind of like a slap in the face,
Yeah.
but it is always out of love
Yeah.
and always out of kindness and compassion and empathy. If you hear anything negative about yourself or your inner children or your teens or your reality, that is your ego. That is your
Yeah.
negative, that is your shadow self. That is your negative self. Your higher self is always going to try and lead you towards a better path, but is rooted in a voice of love and compassion and empathy.
And when a voice comes in and says, "Hey, we don't talk to ourselves like that anymore. We don't look in the mirror at ourselves critically
Mhm.
anymore. We don't chastise ourselves for having sugar today." The voice that just said, "We don't do that anymore," that's your higher self.
Oh yeah. I'll be doing
Yeah.
these habits sometimes,
Oh,
and I'll be observing myself doing the habits. And I'm like, I'm me as the higher self, but then I'm
yeah.
also me as like the current me. And like we're gonna have two conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, if it's like, hey, we don't whatever, that's still that's rooted in not chastising you.
Hmm.
It's rooted, like another
Yeah.
voice would be like, oh wow, you're such a slob because
Yeah.
you do these things, or like this is
Yeah.
why you're not good enough. This is why you're not worthy. That's not your higher self. Your higher self is saying, hey, these things are not in alignment with where we want to be.
Yeah.
They're not going to come in and say negative, negative, negative,
Yeah.
negative.
You
They're going to
suck.
point you towards the
Yeah.
light. They're going to say, like, hey, how about we go do this instead? Let
Yeah.
me explain to you why this is not good for us. But they're going to do it
Yeah.
in like a healthy parental way, not a
Yeah.
narcissist
Yeah. We,
or a
we,
gaslighter.
my my higher self is real good at it. It's like, we don't do that anymore. Mm-mm. No, we don't.
Hmm.
We don't. We don't need that anymore. We don't need that around us. We don't need to get involved in that conversation over there. We don't need you. Our opinion is really valid to us, but it's not valid to that person over. They don't need to hear it. They're not ready to hear it. It's like your inner coach kind of too.
And you need to speak that way to your inner children and teens.
Yeah.
The way that your higher self talks to you is how you need to talk to them. She is,
Yeah.
or they, I keep on saying she, talking about me and Kimberly, but they are giving you a guidebook, a play by play of how to heal your inner children and how to heal your
Yeah.
teens by healing you right now. You just reverberate, regurgitate what your higher self is saying to you to them, and you will all heal together.
Yeah. Because you've heard this voice your whole life, but as you grow and expand in self-awareness and you remember who you are, you can hear your higher, you can hear a much profound version of your higher self because you're ready for it. So the work that's going to be done when you work through an issue in under a minute that took you a year prior is because you're at an advanced level, and it was just the final wheel turning, and the gear or something, that last little piece that needed to happen was waiting for a year for you to get to an advanced level where you were ready for that final piece, because a year ago it would have destroyed you. Today you're like, ugh, oh, okay, yeah, we don't do that anymore, and then
Mhm.
you move on, you know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're gonna take a break for a minute, and then we're gonna jump into some other things, some other juicy things. So we will be right back.